New reforms coming to us very soon. How are landlords going to be impacted? We're going to talk about it now. I'm the ringleader, so listen up.
This is pretty incredible news. This is pretty incredible. You, four senior, super senior property managers reduced to tears. No exaggeration. With the latest legislation that's come through, I just can't believe how difficult it is to be a landlord and what I've witnessed every quarter, every year, the last 15 years in changes against landlords. Great for tenants. And I'm compassionate that it's making life easier for those guys, but I'm considerate that landlords are leaving the market because it's just too hard to be a landlord. What's happened, Cleo? What's happened?
Yeah, it's true. And it's hard to smile because I was so angry after the Office of Fair Trading webinar we did yesterday with the senior PMs. The landlord is being punished. And I don't know why the landlord's being punished. They've been punished enough in the last couple of years to have this come through at a time where a little bit of reprieve could have been, offered is just brutal. It's scary as a property manager. Some people might think, oh, well, it's just compliancy. What's the big deal? There's a lot of changes that impact the bottom line for an investor to keep a property as a rental, which is mind blowing when there's no properties available and people are saying tenants don't have homes. So why are we doing this to make it even harder for landlords to consider having an investment? One of the key changes that I was furious about with these no grounds terminations being abolished, that was the only way a landlord could actually move a tenant along in a nice way without discriminating, without giving a reason. That's why it's called no grounds. Sometimes when you go to a shop and you put a jumper on and you don't like it, you want to take it back, and a consumer has the right to do that.
Or
With the
you want to,
tenancy,
or you want to say we will come back later because you feel
we'll
so
come
bad.
back.
It
Yeah,
feels so bad.
we'll come back later. Sometimes a tenant is not the right fit for a property, whether it be they annoy the neighbors, they're over the top with maintenance. It's just not a right fit. And if it was a relationship and it was deemed toxic, you'd say, well, let's call it quits. That's what the no grounds notice was for. You could just say, you know what? You've been a great tenant,
It's not
thank
working.
you. Here's your 90 days. I've made different plans. And you don't have to get
And
involved.
and the tenant can do the same thing with
Yeah, you don't have to go to
3 weeks.
NCAT. You don't have
In
to
3 weeks.
dissect it. Now they're making us and property managers go through all these hoops and compliancy, and they haven't even, they've drafted the legislation, but it hasn't come through yet. I'm guessing they're trying to figure out how they're going to mandate this. But one of the key points that also annoyed me yesterday was that, say a landlord says, well, I've got a family member moving in to the property. You have to supply evidence that your family member is going to move in. I don't know how they're going to do that. But then if you change your mind, whatever the reason is, there is penalties involved. So you cannot re-let your property within 6 months of having put in that notice to evict the tenant for that reason. And if you do, there is penalty points and a fine imposed. Like, what? I can't understand this. Like, I
It's your
just cannot.
You've purchased the property, you've paid the mortgage, you're paying the mortgage, and then you're being told you can't put the rent up in a manner you wish. You're being told that you can't. But what people aren't considering is they're winning the battle for the tenant, but they're losing the war for the tenant. So what's actually going to happen is landlords dispose of their properties. What is happening is landlords are disposing of their properties. It's just too hard. The interest rate is 0.5% higher to be a landlord. So If I have a mortgage and I live in it, my interest rate is 0.5% lower. If I have a, you know, there's so many disincentives. I've got a landlord that had a land tax bill go from 100,000 a year, 2 grand a week, to 400,000 a year, right? So it's is, and he's renting this property for $3,000 a week, and I'm thinking to myself, like, there's just no incentive. Like, why would you offer up a property if it's just really hard as a landlord? If your taxes are too high and your legislation is like constricted, I'm out.
It's unfortunate, and like our title says, it feels like a punishment for the landlord. It's a punishment. To be fair, it's a punishment for the property manager as well. We've got so much more paperwork to do. And in this webinar, they said that you put your reason forward online to their website, and they can get back to you within 2 days with the answer. Supplying documents, again, going online for these reasons that, most of the time the landlord just wants the tenant out. It's not working out, or they don't know what they're going to do. But now they're going to have to really think about and strategize how they're going to do this. Like
It's
I don't know. It's infuriating, actually.
Yeah,
The
and
other
I
one
think
was
I think I really feel strongly about that. It's choking out the landlord, and when that happens, it's harder for tenants in the marketplace. So it's great to introduce all this legislation in favour of tenants and out of favour of the landlord. But what's the net effect going to be in the end? I understand the effect on that legislation they bring in, very clear.
yeah.
But what does that actually summate to over a period of so long when landlords are having that? Look, I guess we're the largest rental agent on the northern beaches, and I guess the it's great for existing landlords in a way, if because if you're when everyone zigs, you zag, so it's going to skyrocket rents for existing landlords as legislation gets harder and as landlords leave the marketplace. So the existing guys with their properties are just going to get these phenomenal rents. Tenants are going to have to pay more if there's less rental properties in the market, because it's disincentivizing landlords. Tenants are going to have to pay more for rent. That's what I'm talking about when I say they'll win this battle, but they'll lose this war. Not what we want.
No, it's not. And it's a shame for, the tenants that are out there that, their end goal is to own a property themselves. Now, whatever the government got wrong with this housing shortage, it shouldn't be, it's always been passed on to the landlord during COVID. No evictions during the bank interest rate rises. Now the reforms. It's like, I don't know. I'm glad I don't
Oh,
rent out my investment property. My dad lives in it, so
yeah,
otherwise,
I think
you know,
probably for the same reasons, but I think I counted 18 things that have been again ruled against landlords financially over the last probably 10 years, 15 years. It's just it's unbelievable. I think the last incentive a landlord had offered and put on the table was negative gearing. That's when the
well,
government came along and said, how long ago was that? They
I
came
was a
along and said, look.
baby.
Right. And they came along and said, look, we want to introduce more properties into the rental pool. We want to give incentive into the Australian property market for landlords to put properties in the pool. And that in turn kept rents lower. So I think, if we want rents to be lower in the marketplace, offer incentives to landlords. So more landlords buy properties and more tenants are offered up. There's a tax out there for build to rent models that I've seen that's been introduced. They've halved the tax if you're a
That's
corporate,
good.
right? If you're a corporate doing build to rent. So that's a scalable rent model where you've got 200 apartments in one building. Your tax is half. And I'm thinking, what about the mums and dads? Shouldn't they have this incentive instead of the corporates?
Yeah, that's true.
So look, if you've just tuned in, guys, we're talking about the massive changes that have happened they're going to be coming in. The fair trading's introduced, where landlords are, basically can't relet their property for 6 months once they've removed a tenant out of their property on certain basis, and just another disincentive for landlords. And you guys came out of that meeting absolutely rocked.
We did. The whole time I was thinking, I hope there's no audio on these webinars because I was commenting on everything like, what? This is outrageous. I mean, I can see value in certain things and reforms are good. It keeps our industry fresh, but I'm not a fan of these ones. The pet one as well. I'm the first one to say I love a pet, I love a dog, I love a cat. In a rental property, it's hard. They're going to say if you don't get a response from your agent or owner within 21 days, it's assumed that the pet is approved. What? So, okay, I'm just going to say I emailed the property manager. They never got back to me. So now I have a horse in my lounge room. Like, honestly, it's just,
Yeah,
I can't.
it's there's just some common sense stuff there that's just that's not being applied to that legislation. But look, I get what you just said. Like there are problems that need to be fixed. But I think you've also got to make sure that when you're fixing these problems with legislation, that you're not creating a bigger problem.
It's true. And, the only takeaway from this for me, the sore points, these no grounds notices. As a property manager all these years, that was my little golden reserve that I would use to make a bad situation amicable for everyone. I just recently did one because the tenant had a cat. The owner said you could only have a dog. We had a mutual understanding. The tenant found a new place. They weren't getting rid of the cat. And it just was all beautiful. And the tenants moved out, new tenants gone in. The reason is that the owner's neighbor has a dog that's at home all day and he just bark all day because of the cat. So they didn't approve cats to begin with. But yeah, having this no grounds notice, the other option is what? Go to NCAT, issue a breach, follow up on the breach. That's 3 or 4 applications. The tenant gets to stay there with the cat. The owner gets no control over that whole process. And someone from NCAT can decide on this owner's property whether the tenant can stay, whether they are in breach or they're not in breach. I can't, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can, yeah,
Well, well. It's going to happen.
it is. It's
And
inevitable.
it's inevitable. And just remember this: like, if these rents end up skyrocketing, people go, I don't understand why there's not more landlords in the marketplace or more rental properties. And yeah, it's. And it's also a fine line. People choose to be professional tenants. They don't, and I think the government has a policy to get everyone into a property that they own, which is great. Um, but there are people that it just doesn't work for them, and we need rental properties in the marketplace for those guys. So it's I've seen what the rents have done in the last year. It's been reported in the media, which shocks me that rents are no longer going up. Like talk about a bunch of crap. We're seeing the last 6 months, 3 months, 1 year, rents just continue to pound, 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 increase on increase on increase. It's just that it's the marketplace in the northern beaches, so it's counterintuitive to what we're seeing in the media. Weird.
It is. And, every conversation I have with a landlord at the moment is they say, is my property at market rent? And as soon as I go on and I have a look, it's gone up by 50, 60, $80, depending on how many they've done over the, tenancy duration. But every property I look at the moment, when you go to CoreLogic or RP data, it's usually the market is saying us with high confidence that the owner can have an increase and they want their increase because they didn't have it during COVID. They've had all these interest rates. They can only do one per year. They can't pivot and change. This is what's happening. It's a bloodbath. It's a bloodbath out here right now.
Yeah. Well, that's just so much money. Like for a tenant, I've seen these rental increases. We
Huge.
report them on our social media every time we do one, and I just think it's just like I've been doing this for 30 years. And I've never seen these sorts of increases in the marketplace. I'm astonished by it. And I think the legislation's not helping it.
No, you gave a tenant 150 or $100 rent increase back in my early days, you'd be an
Oh,
NCAT within that week.
straight
excessive.
away. Whereas now it's become normal. It's like, why? It's just, why? Because I'm telling you, landlords are leaving the marketplace.
It's true. It's true. There's too much compliancy. It's good to be regulated, but too much compliancy, and some owners just aren't for it. I don't know.
Yeah.
No crystal ball. Tenants, owners, that's what keeps me employed, and I will continue doing the best I can. But I'm, a little disappointed with how this is shaping out right now.
Yeah. Cleo, expert property manager, thank you so much for your
Thank you.
time. Have a good, long, hard think about what you wish for, guys and girls, when we're talking about this legislation against landlords for tenants. I think for tenants in the long run, it's not a good thing either. So we've got to just be really careful on this stuff when it comes in, and respectfully to both to all parties. Like I think, yeah, we just got to make it better for everyone.
I agree. Have a great day, everyone. Happy
Thanks,
Thursday.
Eric. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.